McLaren F1 versus T50 video.
T50 F1 is the absolute dream. Those cars, that road, you just want to do the very best.
Do you just ring up your mate at McLaren and say, can I borrow F1 joy? Henry!
Writing for Evo, when I started out, that was my goal.
Wow!
The thrill of driving, which is absolutely what I still love about cars.
Oh, what a fun car! And I want to just read you some of the quotes you said in that episode, which is,
fireworks at the top end.
It's not as fluidly slick.
It's a devilish sin of heaven.
being able to slide and just playing with it like putty.
I had a fairly big crash whilst I was on work experience at Autocar. That made me think about driving.
What was that in?
That was a Mitsubishi Evo 7 Extreme, and it was up at Bruntingthorpe in the wet. It went in, filled the front slip, lifted off, backwards before you know it.
Henry, in sport, there are a few standout individuals that just magically sit that little bit above the rest, whether it be Ronaldo in football, Max Verstappen in Formula One, Luke Littler in darts. And I often think it's the same thing when I watch people with pure talent doing what it is that they're good at in whatever industry. And that's how I feel when I watch one of your videos. But Henry, in your own words, who are you and what do you do?
Firstly, thank you. That's very, very kind of you. And I now can't think about a dinner party with Ronaldo, Luke Littler, and Max Verstappen. That's quite the trio, isn't it? Who am I? I'm a motoring journalist, I suppose, and I've been doing it for 20-something years now. And I mostly do films for Hagerty on YouTube, but still write as well, sort of various columns, whether it's for Evo or other people. So yeah, I'm a motoring journalist. Occasionally cycling journalist as well, but that's another story.
Well, I actually thought I'd read out your Instagram bio to kick us off to see how you describe yourself from writing it down, which was tall, smiley owner of an Escort Mark II rally car, a Clio 182 and a few bicycles. Scribble words for Evo and TI, mumble on camera for Hagerty. What would younger Henry think of that bio?
I think he'd be pretty excited. I think he'd sort of think I'd done pretty well. He'd be delighted that I was sort of, writing for Evo when I started out. That was my goal. That was the sort of the light bulb moment of when a passion for cars, a love of cars, turned into sort of that. Hang on a minute, I could do this for a job. And it was, that first issue of Evo when it came out, and I read it, and it spoke to me in a way that other car magazines hadn't. And I thought that's what staff writer Evo, that's what I want to be. So the fact that that's on my bio is, that would make young Henry very happy. I think the video side of it, sort of the fact that I'm talking to camera, I think I'd be pretty shocked about, to be honest, because that's not something I ever grew up thinking would happen, because it wasn't, it was Top Gear that was out there, and obviously I watched that, but it was such a different realm. It never occurred to me that I would ever, I know that obviously James Clarkson went from performance car to Top Gear. He made the leap from one to the other, as did obviously James May as well, but it just didn't seem like something that you would do. I wanted to be a writer, and I loved writing. That was really what I wanted to do, and I didn't want to present to camera either. Even when the opportunity first came along, it wasn't something I sort of jumped at the thoughts of, wow, YouTube's here, yes, I can go and finally sort of stick my face in front of a camera and mumble at it. It was it took a bit of, I suppose it was a certain amount of career preservation, if you like, when it first came about, because at the time everybody was saying magazines were dying. Thankfully, they haven't. We now know that's not going to happen. The iPad came out. People said, so we're going to go into that. And YouTube was out there. So, there was a financial crash. So obviously the sales of magazines went down as well. So and I was too young at that point to kind of, my career was just kind of getting going. I'd written my first Evo car of the year. It's like, yes, this is amazing. I want it to continue. And the videos seemed to be something that actually, was going to give it more longevity. So I sort of took a deep breath and found a way to make it work for me, I suppose.
See, the reason I love to get into these stories so much, especially one with a character like yourself, is because I grew up one of those kids that would wander around where we are today outside Hagerty at Bicester, just loving the magic of cars. And I would open YouTube, and long before all the car rebuilders had entered the scene, the videos that would pop up would be Carfection. I remember one of the early ones, Lamborghini Aventador versus Ferrari F12, like versus Aston Martin Vanquish, or the V12. Ecotti every year looking for car of the year. And I would think to myself, like, how can I get close to that? How does that happen? How can you do that as a job? And what has always baffled me about the individuals I meet that end up doing some of this work is, you mentioned Top Gear.
Yeah.
When I think of a motoring journalist on camera, the first second of that is shouty, brash, like a loud, room-filling individual that's got unbelievable confidence to throw that car sideways and just go for it and send it. And when I've always met you, you're so humble, so reserved, yet you're so utterly fabulous on camera, like, and come out of your shell. Where does that bit come from? Was that ever in you growing up?
I think I had a certain confidence around cars for whatever reason. I knew I could speak publicly to some degree, probably. But no, I mean, my parents, for example, thought it was, they didn't, I don't say they didn't have any confidence in me, but when I said, well, I'm going to do some, video stuff, I'm doing some of this now. And apparently they only told me subsequently that they sort of looked at each other, well, how on earth is he going to do that? And sort of, he's hasn't got the skills for it. He mumbles and looks down, and it's just...
Is that where that mumbling word came from? Is that how they would describe you?
I don't know. I'm not sure if I think I'd probably describe myself as that, but it's a good word, mumble, isn't it? It's sort of onomatopoeic, and I like that sort of, I like that word. But it's, you just have to learn. And I discovered that I think the first thing I ever did was the publishing house that owned Evo at the time sent people off on courses because video was coming out and we all had to go and do this. And I sort of went and did it because I had to. And so I probably didn't take it, if I'm perfectly honest, terribly seriously, which was probably the best thing I could have done, because actually I relaxed and I wasn't trying to do it. And it's like in sports, actually, half the time, it's the golf shot you're not trying to hit that goes 300 yards down the fairway. It's when you're trying to do it, when you're standing on the first tee and you desperately want to hit the best shot of your life, that's the one that disappears off into the gardens on the right.
I've just started playing darts. It's exactly the same.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. You've got to hit double top, and it's kind of, you can't do it when in the pub on Friday night, sort of when it doesn't matter. You can do it every time. So I think the fact that I kind of relaxed into it and just sort of thought, well, I'll kind of be, who I am, and kind of not take it that really worked. And suddenly you think, oh, actually, you watch it back and go, well, that's actually sort of all right. I'm not saying it was great straight off the bat at all. And I was lucky that it started at the very early days of video as well, because there weren't huge numbers of people watching. I hope there weren't, but I was in a position where I could look at it, critique it, work out what I wasn't doing well. And you look at it and think, well, if I don't like what I'm doing, how do I improve that? And you realize that you can't mumble at the camera for a video. You can do it in real life, but you can't do it there. So you have to be 150% of yourself. It just so happens that 150% of myself is still about sort of 25% of a normal television presenter probably. But you do you realize that you can't turn up with your hair completely all over the place. You can think, I don't care what I look like, but actually you realize that if you turn up on camera looking a complete mess, that is what people will concentrate on, rather than the car that you're trying to talk about and people should be there for. And that's not what you want. So just all these little things that you work at it like anything else, like you learn to write better, or you learn to drive better. You you want to do it, you work at it, and you try and be the best you can. You watch other people, what are they doing well, kind of all that sort of thing. So, yeah.
But in this podcast, I'd love to unpack so many questions about how someone goes from just sort of wandering into Evo, thinking, what am I going to do here, to sideways in an Aston Martin Valhalla so confidently, and putting together shots and scenes and plans, because I want to understand how you built all of that up. And then I think that relaxation that you describe is where the 1% magic is. I think it sits in there because it disarms the audience and it actually makes them thoroughly relax. And I only think that's, strangely, because YouTube's become a tough game, but I only think that's going to get stronger because of AI and things like that. True English will flourish and come through.
Good luck AI trying to...
I want to understand, was your like mum, dad, or any part of your family like a writer, or was that anybody really into English?
So my father definitely read a lot. Loved the English language. He introduced me to B.G. Woodhouse at a pretty young age, I'd say, sort of, again, through golf. You know, I grew up playing golf with him and my grandfather as well. And the P.G. Woodhouse short stories, collection of short stories is Clicking a Cuthbert and Heart of a Goof. And the Woodhouse has this incredible way with language. And I just remember, you know, I obviously idolized my father, and so he loved these books, and so I, you know, took a real interest in them and, you know, appreciated the language. I also, my godfather used to write these wonderful letters to my father and to me as his godson, and they're very funny, very self-deprecating, and again beautifully written. And again, I could see how much my father appreciated these letters, and he would read them to me before I was too young to kind of, you know, probably decipher the handwriting, because they were handwritten at the time. And so I had this appreciation for language and writing. Didn't make me think I could go and do it necessarily, but it's in there, and it's not, that's something that's obviously not necessarily taught at school. Perhaps it needs to come from somewhere other than school for you to really cotton onto it, if that makes sense. You're going to sort of enjoy certain things about the text that you read, but it's sort of, you have to do it. This was from home, so therefore you want to do it. So I suppose that's where the love of language and writing came from. And the more I did it, that's probably one of the things that surprised me most as well, because obviously, yeah, let's not beat about the bush. I got into this because I love cars, and I watched Dick Liddell sliding them around and liked all the pictures in Evo of people going sideways, and I want to do that. You know, that's the dream. But then the more I wrote, the more you realise I love the writing side of it as well. I love the scripted side of it, and then that evolves into the video as well.
There's two such odd parts there, which is the part of you aimed for what you wanted to do and got it, which almost sits completely separate from the guy that just walked into Evo not really knowing what to do and was really, really relaxed, if you know what I mean, figuring it out. Because you got the dream, but in the moment, maybe you didn't realise it was actually happening?
No, I think, I never just wandered into Evo wondering what was going on. I very much kind of, there was a definite goal there, and I entered, there was the Daily Telegraph had a young motoring writers competition. I entered that, and I would write stuff in a style that I knew would appeal to an Evo, or I thought would appeal to an Evo reader. It was all geared around writing that way, because that's what I wanted to do. And
it's really interesting.
Evo was the first place I applied for work experience when I was at university. Didn't get it the first year, got it the second time I applied for work experience. And then, yes, there was a certain amount of luck after university that I rocked up with my CV of stuff I'd written and portfolio of work, etc., and handed it to them. That was a complete cold call. I got very lucky because there was a certain amount of change at the time. And I think Dickie had just gone freelance, that's Richard Meaden. And so there was a bit of a shuffle around. Jethro had sort of moved up the ladder. There was this opening there, which I couldn't have known. But that's where you make your own luck. You know, I turned up. I obviously hadn't irritated them too much in the week that I'd done there before. And they said, well, there's opportunity here. Come back, do a month of work experience, see how it goes. There might be a bit more after that. And I knew at that point, if there was a month, then there was a job there, and it was up to me to make it work. And again, I think I was calculating enough, but just aware enough as well that what they wanted from me at that point was not to go out and try and slide a Ferrari around, but equally, if you stand up on deadline week and say, anyone want a tea or coffee? Oh yeah, that'd be lovely. And you do the proofreading, because that's not necessarily what people want to do. They've written the articles, they don't want to read their own stuff back. But if you can really apply yourself to it and be the person that they need, then you make yourself, if not indispensable, and at least not somebody that they want to get rid of at the first opportunity. So yeah, it definitely wasn't. I didn't stumble into it.
Now, some viewers may not know this, but this podcast is recorded in the back of a van, one of two van studios that I have, one based here in the UK and one based in the USA. And to get to our guests, sometimes we have to go on rather large drives, sometimes from England to the Nürburgring or from LA to Carmel. But whether it's one of those long drives or even a shorter one, I never want to not be able to get to a guest, bring you guys an episode, and sometimes we only have one chance to get a recording. And this can be the same in many situations in life, whether it's an important family event, you're traveling for work in a van, maybe you're a tradie, or traveling for work in a car to get to a really important meeting. Now, there's nothing worse than if you're on one of those drives than seeing a fault code appear on your dash. Also, a lot of fault codes can be hidden where it doesn't necessarily display. And that's why we use one of these. This is an OBD11. In fact, I've got one in every single one of my cars. And this small pocket-sized device plugs into the vehicle's OBD2 port, which is usually under the dashboard like it is in this van. And then using your phone, the application is able to scan for any faults. Faults can get thrown on vehicles for a variety of reasons, but this morning I had 15 faults appear on the VW Crafter van, and I was able to just swipe up and clear all those faults, and when I rescanned, they were completely gone. This gives complete peace of mind that there's no issues with the van and that I'm able to get to my guests safely and on time. So yes, this little device really is capable of giving full dealership level diagnostics, especially for the brands listed on screen, but also basic diagnostics for any vehicle after 2008 fitted with one of those OBD2 ports. An OBD11 will use its car buying assistant to run lots of checks on the vehicle, making sure it's in good health and something that you should be buying. It's even able to scan hybrid batteries to check their condition. But the most common thing I hear the audience using this OBD11 for is to use the 1,000+ one-touch applications that you're able to unlock in many vehicles, just like Apple CarPlay. So if you think that you shouldn't be traveling without an OBD11, and you really shouldn't be, then you can grab one using the link in my description or pinned comment of this video and using the code RTS, Road to Success. This will give you 20% off, chunky 20% off one of these little devices to make sure that you always have peace of mind and can do diagnostics. This question then will apply to getting into what your world of cars looked like growing up, to understand why you were so passionate about them. How did you know what an Evo reader was? How did you know who that was?
I suppose, well, I'm not sure.
You mentioned writing it in an Evo reader's style.
An Evo style, yeah.
If you say to me, are you going to do that video in a Matt Armstrong style versus a, film on Evo? They're two very different things. Yes. I totally understand what you mean by that. But like, what was that Evo style in writing? Because again, my generation is so bad with just knowing what it is on films. How would you see that?
I think, so obviously I read various car magazines, so I would have read Autocar and Top Gear and Car Magazine, as it was then, which was slightly different to what everybody sort of harks back to. That was a little bit before my time. But when Evo came out, it was the photography as well. I think, I was definitely a visual person in the outset, but it was longer form generally with Evo, and it was detailed. It focused on the driving, the thrill of driving, which is absolutely what I still love about cars as much as it is that feel of driving. And the way they described that was, I think, what I really liked. It seemed to go that bit deeper, and just a real love for the cars, which spoke to me. So
Where
I
did
think.
that thrill come from being young? What was one of the most first thrills?
First thrills, I suppose. I mean, my parents loved cars. They met through cars. They had MGs, and
Both my parents had MGs when they met.
yeah. So there's definitely that in my background. Equally, riding a bicycle, sort of, the thrill of going quickly on that, and but I've always loved the idea and the feel of driving, and that feel of movement on four wheels, which I've always understood better than two wheels. Very amateur level race bicycles, and I'm never as confident on a bicycle as in a car. So yeah, I don't know what it is. It's something clearly in me must be sitting in the passenger seat, my father driving quickly or something, and sort of thinking this is.
But when you say your father driving quickly, I think it's long enough that we can dub him in now. But would he fully slide round a roundabout with traction control off in second gear?
There wasn't no traction control at the time. I'm old enough that there wasn't that.
But I think for so many petrol heads, if they've got into cars through their dads or their mums, then their parent is always going to be a semi-hero for them in their cars. Like if I think back to 2016 buying a Maserati for the first time with dad, his first like sports car, and one day, and I'm sure people can relate to this, their parent would get a little wiggle on it, go sideways like an inch. It'd be like, do you see that? And you'd always think, wow, dad just slid a car. Now the bit I want to understand, like so many people would, is how did you go from arriving at Evo with such a passion for writing in cars to being able to slide a McLaren F1 on a shoot, and know how to deal with that and be confident enough you're not going to smash up 25 million, and take an Aston Martin Valhalla and just playing with it like putty? Like, what happened? Where's the pivotal moment of being able to do that?
I don't know. I still wouldn't say I'm the best at doing it, but I kind of there's practice, definitely, kind of, which you get a lot of at Evo. And I was very lucky that when I joined, it was still, I kind of served an apprenticeship, if you like. And I remember going down to Bedford Autodrome with Jethro, for a photographer, Kenny P, and spending the afternoon down there with our long-term caterer, learning to slide it round. Corner catering is not actually necessarily the easiest thing to slide in sort of big angles, but kind of, yeah, exactly. You sit on the rear wheels and you kind of feel bigger because of the angle when you're sitting so far from the front and the point that it's sort of arcing around and stuff. I think I thought about it. It probably comes across, I think, fairly deeply about stuff, to the point where people probably assume I'm daydreaming a lot of the time, but I'm probably thinking about something, and kind of analysed it. I had a fairly big crash whilst I was on work experience at Autocar. That made me think about driving.
What was that?
That was a Mitsubishi Evo 7 Extreme. It was a long-termer, and it was up at Bruntingthorpe in the wet. And,
somebody else crashed at Bruntingthorpe that came on here in the wet, and that was their early days. I cannot remember who it is. If I can remember, I'll overlay it here as up, because there's somebody else that's been on here that binned a car at Bruntingthorpe in their early years in automotive journalism. So you're not the only one to do it, I think.
No.
And what age were you then?
I would have been about 20, I suppose, probably. So I'd have been, I'd have been at university. So I'd done the work experience at Evo the year before, and then work experience at Autocar the year after. And I remember being terrified picking the thing up and driving it up the M1 to get to Bruntingthorpe, and kind of delivered it there safely. It was all fine, kind of,
nervous.
I wasn't, absolutely. I wasn't kind of reckless or anything like that. I definitely was sort of very respectful, but then I've been taken around this place and sort of sliding cars around, saying, well, where do you learn to do this? And chap saying, well, places like this, when you've got spare time and there's nothing to hit. Famous last words. And driving, I clearly remember it as you can. Most of these formative things sort of we had to take the cars from the sort of gatehouse, the entrance, across to the staging post, which was at the bottom of the main runway. And it was wet, and I remember going through the standing water thinking, be careful, and sort of, but then also thinking, no, you've got this opportunity here. Kind of, there's nothing around. There's nothing to hit. There's nothing to hit, and there was nothing to turn.
Balls,
it was kind of sort of
security.
Yeah, when I remember just coming over this rise, sort of pushing it, feeling the front go light, lifting off. So it wasn't that I went into it and just sort of, gave it the big Scandi flick and sort of booted the throttle, which would, in hindsight, probably have been better. It was kind of the wrong way to go about it. It was almost being too cautious, and you sort of went in, fill the front slip, lift it off, you're backwards before you know it. And then you're on wet grass, and then you're in the trees, and then you're trying to start the car, and then you're looking over and going, oh, there's a massive dent in that side, and I'm glad I wasn't in the passenger seat.
Do you think that's the moment for so many people that have become fabulous for sliding cars around, is that they probably had a moment in their early point learning to do it where they realise they've just got to grab it by the scruff of the neck and boot the throttle. like cause when I remember Chris Harris F12 video, probably I think it was on Anglesey, he had like all the tyres stacked up. Like, off we go, and it's like, oh my God, I'd love to be able to do that one day. Like, that is unbelievable. And it must just be that grab it by the scruff of the neck moment.
I think for some it is. I definitely don't have the absolute confidence when I first... Some people can just do it and have that absolute self-belief, I think, as well. I'm almost still quite surprised when I discover I can do it. But I think rallying helped a lot. That was a massive help, because it just, forcing the fire of competition and all that, and you sort of, you want to be good, got to push yourself. And that was pretty unforgiving on narrow lanes and in forests and stuff. But also huge amounts of fun. So,
and how did you just start rallying like that?
That was again, it was early days, and everyone else had done racing, and it was a sort of, rite of passage in a way, that you become a racing journalist and you do the car stuff, and you learn how to slide a car, but really kind of you want to prove yourself as a driver, I think, in some form of competition. And everyone else that had gone through had generally done Caterham Academy, but from a journalist perspective, that had been already done. That had been done before. So couldn't do that. And I'd done a couple of races. I'd had my race license since university. Again, because I thought, I want to be a motoring journalist. How do I prove I can drive? Well, I could go and get my race license. It doesn't necessarily prove you can drive. It doesn't mean you slide a car around a corner, but it shows willing. At least if you turn up somewhere, you can show them a piece of an article you've written, a column about something, and it's like, oh, okay, this is good. This would fit in the magazine. Can he drive? Well, here's my race license. At least it shows something. So I'd had that, and I'd done a couple of races, and I enjoyed it, but it hadn't been quite what I was looking for whatever reason. I don't have that discipline. Funny enough, I probably might more now, but at the time I didn't have that sort of ability to just sort of hit a lap time, hit a breaking point, lap after lap after lap after lap. And I think jostling in amongst other cars as well, I wasn't sort of too afraid of making a mistake, I think. And that's something I know is a fault of mine. I don't like making a mistake. It's probably why, going back to the sliding thing, I'm not as confident as other people, because I would much rather work up to the limit, knowing that I can do it, rather than, I'm too fearful of sort of just getting it and booting it and it all going wrong.
Do you think you've had opportunities to drive other cars maybe others haven't, because people have seen that in you, that you're a little bit more thoughtful?
Maybe. I don't know. You'd have to ask other people that have lent me cars, but I think it's something you learn over the years, that sort of if you're sitting next to somebody and maybe you've got the opportunity to drive round a track on a launch, and they've put a driver next to you, they don't know you from Adam, and you've got 5 laps in this car, or 2 sessions, or whatever it is. First point from me is not to sort of try and reach that first corner and throw massive shapes in it. It's you probably spend that first lap talking to them, getting to know the car, not driving it flat out, because you're going to learn more about the car in those first few laps from just soaking it all in, seeing what all the control weights are, all that sort of thing, but also giving them confidence and saying, look, this is fine. We've got this. I know my way around here. We're going to be fine. So that when you do start pushing it, they've got the confidence in you and they let you push it further than they might have done otherwise.
Is that how you got up to speed with talking about individual elements of a car? Because when I first started driving sports cars, completely new to it, it felt like an entire thing. When I drove a Cayman, it was an entire thing. I wouldn't really be able to pick out, think about the steering and the brakes and how the suspension was. It was only until I'd driven lots of stuff, and probably after like 4 or 5 years, where I'd be like, really like the steering in those McLarens. I prefer a hydraulic rack. Like, I get it. Yeah. Like suddenly, I get it. How long did it take for you from when you started to get those I get it moments, so that in your writing you could talk so well about the brakes, the engine at the top end, and make those differences?
Yeah, I think again it comes back to you do a lot of reading. You read the magazine, you read it within intent, and you felt like you were in the car driving it. So you soaked it all up from the different writers and the different perspectives, and they would all talk about these things. And yes, fine, I hadn't driven the cars at that point, but then when I first joined, and you're going through this apprenticeship and you jump into cars for the first time, like Clio, which is sitting outside here, which is my everyday car, and you jump into a Clio 182 for the first time, and you go and drive it, and then you come back and it's up there already, and you know what it's meant to be like, or what you're matching it to what you've read. Or you come back and read the article and go, oh, okay, right, so I get that, or I'm not getting that. Why am I not getting that? Go back out, drive it again, and you build up this picture over time with all the cars, and it's something I think if I have I don't know if it's a talent or not, but I can recall what it's like to drive different cars kind of pretty easy. I'm terrible with names and faces. I'm walking to a room full of people, and if somebody walks up to me, it's really not great, but kind of
but you remember every drive.
But I can drive down a piece of road that I haven't driven for 15 years, and something will twig that corner. I've been here before, or you get back into a car and instantly you remember it, how it all feels, and it kind of and even without driving, I can sit there and I can recall what certain cars are like and how they felt.
It's so weird how so many individuals that are passionate about oils and fluids and petrol feel so comfortable going so quickly. But that's the spot where you feel most at peace,
And it's about feel, isn't it? It's about that sort of, and it's about feeling. It is that wonderful point where you feel comfortable with a car, and that's the point you're trying to get to with the car, and feel comfortable sliding it, and then because then you feel absolutely when you know what all the tires are doing, you know how the steering reacts, you know how the engine reacts, and it's just, that is the best feeling, because then it's the whole man and machine together sort of thing. That is and it's the feel, like so many things. It's like the feel of a good golf shot, and that's what I find. Or skiing down a mountain is sort of, that is what I find really, really exciting. I think at the end of the day, it's that feel and understanding what it's all doing. And then, if you're enjoying my conversation today with Ben, please would you consider hitting the subscribe button to the channel? Thank you.
Well, I want to tell you a little bit about my day yesterday.
Excellent. Good.
Because I spent a lot of time writing, as I do, being a YouTuber. And I have to research my guests. I have to write how we're sometimes going to put trailers together to give to the guys. I have to write, if I'm researching a video, that I'm going to do a piece about a certain car. My fishery channel videos, I have to write. I spend so much time writing. And naturally, occasionally, if I want facts or figures, or, give me the drivers that have joined last on the grid in X order, I'll use AI. I'll just go on and use ChatGPT. And I've always loved English. I'm horrendous at spelling, but I like to think that I'm good with words a little bit. But I spent my day consumed on a computer, writing, ChatGPT, get that fact. And then I thought, right, because I always do it as late as possible, I'm going to put some of Henry's episode together. So I started watching a load of videos, ones that I'd seen before, just because I wanted to pull out some quotes. I started watching the McLaren F1 versus T50 video again. And 40 minutes, I was absolutely captivated again. And I watched that video, the way you started it in the cinema, the way that even the light from the cinema screen was playing, so it made it look like you were in there. And I was soaking up all these details. And it made me realise how so many of us, when we watch a video, we are just consuming content. We're burning time. So I'm going to watch that because it's, I'm going to watch that guy competitive eat because I'm eating and I want something on telly. Yeah. But that video, something happened. Like I felt a sense of tension release. I felt so relaxed watching it. And I thought, my God, this is such a skill. And I want to just read you some of the quotes and things you said in that episode, which was fireworks at the top end. It's not as fluidly slick. An up change in this is a devilish sort of heaven. The main beams actually still need some work to throw light slightly wider on narrow roads, but they are brighter than a fictional love child of Miss Marple and Sherlock Holmes. How with those, are you coming up with those statements on the spot? How long do you spend writing them? Take me through that video as a construction masterpiece.
So first of all, need to give huge credit to Glenn Winhall and Aaron, but Glenn, who I work with on all the Hagerty films, I've worked with him. I worked with him at Car Faction as well, and everyone that I've worked with over the years, Sam, Riley. It's such a collaborative process, as it was for me, certainly always at magazines, and I will get back to the videos in a minute, but that matching of images and words, which I think, because for me, a film is very much it's the extension of a magazine. Once you realise that, oh, hang on, a really good magazine feature should be the case where you're talking about something down here and you've got the image of it up here, and you're adding to the image that you can see there. And it's the same with a film, I think. So I love that process. I love the images, and that's what excited me about doing the films. So huge credit to them, because the flickering of the lights and stuff, you can have it in your head, but you need somebody that you work with and you go, oh, can we try and do that? Or they go, why don't we do this? And you think, oh yeah, that's going to look great. And it was his idea for the
it's even as much as like, so go find a cinema that will play you something on the screen and then sit there that has that exact style of seat. Like I could see being a video creator, every detail that went into that. It must take hours and hours.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time. I mean, it's a lovely thing working for Hagerty as well. Sort of just that's been so nice that we do have that little bit of extra time. We still produce a lot of films a year, and it's not always, we can't always spend the extra time doing it like we did with that film. And you know that's a really big film. You want to get it right. It's T50 and F1. It's the absolute dream, and we somehow convinced them to brought it all together. So you get those cars, that road. You just want to do the very best job possible, because I want to do it for me, because I have that, I want to watch it. I want to feel like I've done the best job possible, but also for everybody out there watching, it's like, this is the opportunity. Let's put it to bed. Let's do the best job we possibly can. And it doesn't come around that often. So with something like that, you probably do go the extra mile.
Does it start with notepad and pen?
Yeah, definitely kind of a bit of that, but there's also a bit of, and I'll often write out all the facts about the two cars if we're comparing, or even just the one car I'm going to do, because I think it's useful to put the facts out, so you're getting those right for a start, because I want to get everything right. I don't like making mistakes, as I said before. So you start from the facts, and then you can build everything up from there. And the other thing is that I don't plan too much, because I don't tend to script stuff overly before we shoot, or before I've driven the cars. I hadn't driven T50 before I went out there, and so I don't know what that car's like.
Will you start with like a sequence? Like, oh, do you have the idea to open it in the cinema before you have actually shot the film, for argument's sake? Like, do you go, right, we've got to start, got a hook. We need to drive T50 on its own. We need to drive F1 on its own. We need to have shots of them driving together. We need to have a section stood talking about the facts and figures. We need to have 5 really beautiful shots. Do you structure it like that so that you have like a base?
No, we know that there are going to be certain shots that you're going to build a film up with. So you've got your drone shots, you've got your passing shots, you've got the bolt-ons where you strap the camera to the car, obviously my pieces to camera, and in the car, driving, all that sort of stuff we know we've got to get. So you have location cars, you can get all that. And you can then, the specific shots you need to be thinking about probably whilst you're out there. So again, if I've talked about something, make sure you've got a shot of it, because otherwise that's... the film thing was something we wanted to do. We didn't know if we'd have the time afterwards to go and get it. So you plan that you can make the film without it. But then we got a chance to go and do it. And it's, again, we used to have the opportunity when you went on a launch, you would go there, drive the car, do the photographs, but then you come back and you'd write the story afterwards. Whereas when you film and you go out, something like that, if you haven't driven the car before, you've kind of got to make your mind up pretty quickly about what the car's like. And you have to rely on that bank of information that's somewhere in you to instinctively compare it to other cars, and what's this doing brilliantly, what it's not doing brilliantly, what stands out about all these facets. And that's sort of, and you don't know that till you've driven the car. So those are the bits that you've got to do there and then. But if I can, and we did it with the 849 Testarossa film that we did, went out yesterday as we're talking now. I like being able to just come back and have that bit of thought about a car, because it's frequently quite hard to really put it into context without just that little bit of distance. And it was lovely doing that shoot as well, because we had 2.5 days to shoot it. So I could go to sleep, get up the next morning, get back in the car. And that's always a nice thing, because you come to it kind of knowing, but also fresh again, and kind of see what stands out. So
talk me through, because obviously it's your world, but to so many people that watch you, they'd love to understand. Do you just ring up your mate at McLaren and say, can I borrow F1 Joy? You know, I drove it 10 years ago. Can I borrow it again for a shoot? Like, how does that process work?
It varies a lot. So, I had certainly pitched T50 and F1 to Gordon Murray Automotive sort of probably a year before, sort of said, can we try and aim for this? I'd love to make it happen. And it takes a long time. And like you say, it's the trust, it's the relationships you build up over the years and stuff. They also knew that I wasn't, stuff I didn't like about the car I was going to talk about. This is not just, it's not marketing for them. Obviously, to some extent, they'll view it as that because it is, but I genuinely went into that not knowing if I was going to enjoy T50 more than the F1. So it's a risk on their part as well still, which I think people don't.
There's a fine line there, isn't there? Just to jump back, you mentioned your first crash, which you obviously remember.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you upset a brand?
Blimey.
Which one?
I remember, I don't think Pagani were terribly happy with me because I talked about the Cinque Zonda, which was 105, obviously, and that was the first time they put in a paddle shift in a Zonda.
Yeah,
and I wasn't terribly complimentary about it. The rest of the car was amazing. Kind of, it had the carbon titanium chassis in it, and it was set up beautifully, incredible engine, absolutely loved it. Just paddle shift felt kind of like it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't a dual clutch kind of absolutely super smooth kind of thing. I think they weren't.
And when you've got perfection everywhere else,
exactly
that stands out, isn't it?
So is it. So, and I think I genuinely think, and it's again, I've got more confident with it over the years, is that as long as you're honest and you're talking objectively about the things you don't like. So don't be, if I don't like the colour of a car, that's subjective. Somebody else out there might absolutely love the colour of that car. I can say I don't like it, but don't make it the whole thing, because you're not being objective there. If a car understeers way more than it should do, that's being objective. That's just what it does. So you report that, and the engineers will know as well. That's the other thing. You're not probably about to find some departments might not know, but you talk to engineers that have engineered that car, they will know. They're better drivers than me. They're much better engineers than me. So when you report back and say, well, this car's doing this, yeah, you're just being honest about it. They know it.
With your passion, do you ever feel like you've gone to drive something, maybe not like the Cinque, maybe a new GT3 over the years, something like that, and been like, you better be good? Like, do you get in that mindset, like, you better be good because you mean a lot to me? And have you ever walked away from those shoots like disappointed sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in interesting times at the moment with cars. You know, it's not, again, manufacturers know this, is sort of we haven't got the wonderful. We still have got amazing natural aspirations out there.
So you still grease through somehow.
And you drive something like a Revuelto, and you sort of think, hang on a minute, we have got something that's actually better here. It feels like, you know, I said it feels like progress. We're not just treading water. This is actually doing things we haven't been able to do with cars before. It's giving you everything, and it's got natural aspirated engine. This is a hybrid, but it's amazing. It's brilliant. But manufacturers are struggling. That's why we're seeing, I review lots of resto mods at the moment.
Yeah, we are in the age of the resto mod.
Yeah, absolutely. Or older cars, going back to older cars. You know, but the manufacturers can only do what they can do with legislation. It's a very tricky time. How do you approach something? Do you compare it to what's gone before and say, well, it's not as good as the car that's 10 years ago, but you're playing to different rules?
Because that would be like comparing the new Renault 5, which is electric, to the Renault 5 of old, wouldn't it? Because they are completely different things. So would you step into that as, I'm reviewing an electric car, or I'm reviewing Renault 5 to Renault 5?
No, you're definitely reviewing an electric car, but we did do, you know, it with a 5 GT, and it's kind of, it's fun to look back and see, you know, design cues that they've picked up, and actually, there is a bit of that sort of four square feeling in it. It's obviously totally different, but again, like, the engineers know that this turbocharged engine here, yes, it has more power, but it's not as, you know, emotional as the natural aspirated engine that went before. They're car people too. They get it, but they can only work with what they're given, and if they're aiming for that goal, then that's what it is. So
going back to some of the quotes in that video, you know, the brighter than a fictional love child of Miss Marple and Sherlock Holmes. Like, do you have that? Do you write those the night in between the shoot, between like day 1 and day 2? Like, do you write down front lights and then come off of that with like different things you could say about?
I'm trying to have if it's something like that where I've got the time to go and think about it, or if it's only a 1-day shoot, you'll sit down and try and have, you know, 10 minutes in the car just thinking through. And I can't read a script in a car. I tried that early days, but that really is, I remember sort of, I think I had, big post-it notes sort of there with like specific lines that I'd written out to say. Just, I can't do that. I can.
So it's got a hit to remember it.
I can kind of remember it. If there's a specific line, I can probably remember that. But what I found is I'll spend too much time. You can almost see the cogs whirring, basically. If you look down the camera, you'll see me sort of thinking about that sentence I'm trying to say rather than just being natural. So I'll have the points that I want to hit. And obviously I know what I want to say about the car. And there might be a word or nugget that I want to weave in there. But I can't
it's like the great filter, isn't it? Because if something's really, really good, you will remember it.
Yeah.
So it's like, if it doesn't quite hit, it's like, it doesn't quite get through. And the first time I was ever captivated by what somebody said on camera, it was Clarkson talking about one of my top 3 all-time favourite cars, a 458. And he was going down the runway. It's like a bear. Sounds like a burning bear. And I'm like, how the hell did you come up with burning bear for that engine? And it was only when I understood and started speaking to the team Clarkson had around him, like I had a conversation on here with Richard Porter about his writing, just how much was also given and dropped in the Clarkson. But you everything, all your quotes and statements and things, that's all your writing.
Yeah, that's all. I mean, sometimes I get to talk to Glenn and he'll sort of say, "Oh, I thought that was," and yes, Glenn, I'll have that. Thank you very much, and I'll pinch it off him. But no, it's me. It has to come from up here somewhere, and you have to remember as well. You're seeing the edited version. Yeah, there are lines in there where, the dark days where I have to sit there looking at myself messing up lines or getting it wrong, or oh, come on, Henry, just say
Would
something.
You get really frustrated with yourself? When were those dark days? 10 years, 15 years?
No, it's still now, because I still have to kind of so the way it works is that we'll come back off a shoot. Glenn will send me all of my pieces to camera that I've said in the car or outside the car, or if we've done an interview, he'll send me that as well. And then I'll sit down and I will go through, I watch myself in some sort of, and I don't think anybody, unless you're a real sort of pathological narcissist or something, really enjoys watching themselves that much. And I know what I sound like, so it's got easier. I don't have that sort of whoa sort of moment every time I open up the browser, but it's not for me a particularly enjoyable. And just occasionally think, oh, that was all right. I've done okay there, because I know that it's going to work well in the film. But there's definitely times when you're sort of just hoping that you've said something that sounds right, and you're not going to have to work too hard to cut it up.
Talk to me about, and I bet you've had some fiery debates and agreement sessions in bars on Evo shoots about this. How frustrating do you find YouTube as the platform that you publish on? Because I feel it's almost so far away from what you do now. YouTube is a bit like, it's retention. Yeah. How can you build retention? And your films should be on Netflix. Like, they really should. I think anyone would agree with that. Like that F1 TV, that's a Netflix grade movie. Like, do you find it annoying that you have to publish on YouTube?
I suppose what I find frustrating at times is that, or difficult, is that you're judged by a number. And I'm not saying that Hagerty necessarily judges it by numbers, but instinctively everybody does. It's like, that film has done more views than that film, therefore that film is better, or his sort of, and I think in the last sort of year or so, we've seen YouTube numbers generally drop down sort of pretty much across the board. And that's difficult, because then you're sort of thinking, hang on a minute, why is this not? And you have to, and it takes a couple of months to reset and realize, no, everybody's numbers are down, but that's sort of, but all you can do is put something out there that you're proud of and happy with. And I'm very lucky that by and large, the comments under the films are really nice, which is not the case, obviously, over a lot of the internet. We did a film recently, and it was with the Scarborough F1, the Dan Gurney Eagle sort of car, that's sort of the F1 car from the road, 60s F1 car from the road, mad car, one of those films that you think, if that doesn't go down well, I don't know what will. And Neil, who owns it, said, God, the internet can be quite a nice place, can't it? Because there were lots of nice comments, and even Dan Gurney's son even commented underneath the film, which was lovely. So I draw a lot of kind of heart from that, and I've got better at ignoring the bad comments, because there'll always be some people that just they've had a bad day and they want to go and
had on Top Gear. No, it's the bit that Tiff never had. I was speaking to him. They never. I think they were shielded. I asked Andy Willman about this. I said, because they're such big personalities and big characters, and if something's going to upset them, you're going to see it with those three. And Willman said if they'd have had a comment section, he thinks it would have broken a couple of those presenters. So it is a different land that we operate in. Yeah,
very much so. And again, sort of the magazine, it was, I've thought about this in the past, that there was a letters page, but you've got a long period between writing the article, magazine getting published, somebody buying it, somebody sitting down, writing a letter or an email, and that coming in, and then it being and then probably having a team of people, there in the office who can read it and go, well, yeah, you did get that right, and it's kind of at that point, or it's praise, and it's lovely. So you've kind of, it's a very different world to kind of hit publish on YouTube, and instantly you've got your sales figures, if you like, kind of equivalent in terms of how much the views going up, and you've got all the feedback and the comments.
What
right
was
there.
Your peak automotive journalism favorite years, especially with the cars, is what I'm on about? Was it like, I have been lucky enough to buy some of my favorite cars, and even as someone that likes the modern stuff, as I get a little bit older, I've now got my 2000, really it's 2003, but for me it's 2012 to 2018. That's the stuff I'd buy.
Yeah.
It's 2012 to 2018. Like, were they like the golden years for reviewing cars for you?
I think for reviewing cars,
It's like the Speciale coming out.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're still cars. I saw one the other day, and you just check it in. But there are still things like 250. That car. What you saw on camera is not. It's not faked. People can always tell kind of if I'm really enthusiastic about a car, or perhaps, just enjoying it, because let's face it, I'm driving a supercar. Kind of, even if it's not my favorite one, I'm still learning about it. It's something new. It's fun. I'm not sitting behind this. I'm incredibly lucky.
The
But
moment
you can
the
just,
engine came in.
yeah, like,
But in that film, you go from, the only bit I disagree with, which is going to upset a lot of people, probably even, is I'm not really a BMW person. Soz, everybody. I know you won't really care, but I'm not. I don't like that engine, the way it sounds in an F1 when you hear it on film. And then the minute that T50, you're like, oh, that's an engine. Like, that's Cosworth. That's an engine. Like, that was just unbelievable.
Well, weirdly, I was the other way around. So I knew that I loved the McLaren F1 engine, and that induction note from the rescripting of it. It's kind of, I knew I loved that. I'd heard T50 from the outside before, and it's such a different sound, and it's so sort of high pitched. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about that, and then in the car, it's absolutely spine tingling, and kind of, and when it all comes together, sort of, it is just magical. And I had a drive in that car that's not, I'm sure lots of people have said to you before that sort of a lot of the magic moments happen off camera, and those drives that it's to and from the hotel or whatever, and sort of, and I had definitely had one of those. So in that,
if you had to add to that Instagram bio, let's say McLaren and Gordon Murray were even kinder, and they said, you know what, at the end of this show, you get to keep one of them.
Yeah.
You get to keep a car, and you can have it. You're not ever allowed to sell it, but you get to add it to your bio. So it will become tall, smiley owner of an Escort Mark II rally car, a Clio 182, and
oh wow.
Just to have that supercar to McLaren, would you be taking the T50?
I mean, you said how would my Charles Elf looking at it? They would want me to have the F1, absolutely, sort of no questions asked. But the pure driving pleasure, as I said in the film, the T50 is
perfection.
Just it's incredible. Kind of, it's that drive that I had back up the road in Spain in the evening, which I kind of wrote about as well, was just absolutely spine tingling. So kind of I'd be I think I'd spend the rest of my life thinking I should have chosen the other one, probably, for all sorts of reasons. So it's
it is really nice, because I obviously try and get into the individual. I've still got mad questions to ask of how you operate to do what you do, but it's very rare you get the chance to sit with someone that is so passionate and understanding about vehicles. If you'd have asked yourself 5 years ago, did you think cars like that T50 and the Revelto would live up and exist? You'd have probably said, not really, it's all going downhill. Do you think, are you continuously impressed more than you thought you'd be with where we are?
I suppose.
Did you all think on an Hagerty it was getting more negative? Yeah,
I think there was a sort of, there's definitely been a element of it's going away from what we love, and manual gearboxes and all that sort of thing. But equally, I'm very aware that we've been saying for ages that the supercar is going to die, or this is the sort of, and you do kind of live in the moment a lot of the time. Sort of with this job, you're thinking about kind of, yes, you're thinking about the next film, but you're the chance to sit back and think what's coming 10 years down the line is perhaps not what, maybe I've done enough of it. I don't know.
Would you ever consider an 849 Testarossa over a Speciale?
No, I wouldn't. Kind of, it's not, but then Speciale is kind of so far up there for me. It's kind of, and somebody said that in the comments, and you get it. Revuelto is absolutely mega. That's such a good car though. That's, if we're going to pick benchmarks, that's current Evo car of the year, and it's before that it was still, it's got this naturally aspirated engine behind it. The way that we're now seeing a lot of the hybrid supercars, hypercars make the torque vectoring and stuff work, and really pulling it all together, which is something that we sort of promised, but then in the early days it was there for some reasons, and yes, it was maybe adding traction, but now we're really seeing the dynamic benefits of it. And again, 849 film, I said it's sort of the democratization of this performance. So we've got 1,035, 36 brake horsepower in 849, and that's the headline figure, and we're seeing that. But actually, it's the way that it gives you access to incredible balance on track, and kind of to have that car in the sweet spot more easily, more accessibly for more people. That's absolutely extraordinary. So yes, it's straight line performance, but it's what it does in the corners, and we're seeing the benefits of all that now. And that's what you see in Revuelto. So yes, it's heavier than Aventador. It's got the hybrid stuff that the Aventador didn't. So you're sort of, on paper, you're thinking, well, this is not good. This is not going in the right direction. Then you drive it and you realize that what they've managed to achieve with it and make it more accessible in terms of the way it drives, and you can drive that car in a way that you couldn't drive a big Lamborghini before. That's pretty cool. That's pretty exciting.
Do you ever worry when you're driving stuff for the general public supercar owner? Like, do you ever get out of the cars on the Hagertys and think they're going to kill people? They are. Like, and I say that because a car like the 296 has been quite responsible recently for quite a lot of big, sadly tragic accidents. And I think, is that accessible Ferrari just becoming too much to handle on the roads?
I don't know, because we've got,
I suppose people used to bin scuds and things like that, didn't they?
Yeah, people have crashed cars.
Since Brunting thought.
Yeah, exactly. Since Brunting thought, it's kind of, lots of people. I wasn't the only one to crash a Mitsubishi Evo, but, maybe maybe we're seeing more of it now, because as ever, social media is now, more prevalent than ever. So there seems to be a camera literally wherever there is an accident. And, there was a spate of Pro F40s getting crashed not so long ago as well. The cars are safer than ever, and if you leave all the systems on, the things they can do to keep you out of trouble are extraordinary. So you've got to make that decision to turn it all off as well. It's always the person behind the wheel at the end of the day that's making the decisions. Yes, of course. I mean, we've got all this. What do you want to say? It's going to get. I don't know. It's going to. Cars are incredibly fast, incredibly quick. They're also, tires are better now than they ever were before. An early 911 will get you into trouble.
As if you turn it all off, you're on your own.
At a very low speed, kind of on original rubber, and it's.
I think if anyone was to take away I've definitely taken away how you speak about sort of edging into a car and really understanding it before you're up to speed to kind of mess about with it like that. I think sometimes from the films, of course, you get the sense of you're in, bang, you know what I mean, sideways. But this is why I like having these conversations, because you build that picture about what it's actually like for you making a film. And you've made so many over the years on Evo, Carfection, Hagerty. Your career, like, how do you, like, the actual work, the actual, like, contract side of it behind, How have you moved around over the years? What's your timeline been? And like, what does it look like work for you?
Just going back to the building the picture of the car quickly, 'cause I think that's something I worked out. Again, going back to the early days, and you're getting into it, and you're not going to drive the car sideways from the get-go and all that. But you look at, again, the people, one of the people I really admired in terms of the writing was Peter Tomlin at Evo. He's not up there with Dickie and Johnny, won't mind me saying this, kind of in terms of driving. But he loved cars, and he can describe a car fantastically well. And it made me realize that actually, you don't have to be driving a car absolutely. I want to drive on the door hands. I want to be able to describe what it's like absolutely on the limit. But it's just as it's important not to skip the first steps, because even if you're the greatest driver, a lot of the time you're not going to be driving like that. And the car should be enjoyable at all speeds. It's what you want to get into that. Porsche, it's why they're so good at so much what they do, because when you first get into it and you just drive down the road and you go around that first roundabout, at 20 miles an hour, you've got that feedback through the steering. You've got the weighting of the pedals, the way the seat holds you, all those things. Anybody that loves cars, thinking now about those moments, and anybody can appreciate that. Even just sitting in the car, there are all those things that you love, that you remembered when you were a child, and you got somebody said at the petrol station or the car show, "Do you want to sit in it?" Yeah, I want to sit in it. And so, just describing that moment of sitting in the car still means so much, as much, if not more, than doing the big sideways stuff. And if you've got to kind of bring the two together, I think. Career path was, I spent a long time at the magazine, to be honest, for sort of the first, I think it was 12 years I spent at Evo, but there was always, I suppose, progress in terms of, there was the first couple of years of apprenticeship, and then people moved away to go and do other things. So Jethro and Dickie went off and did Drivers Republic, which, was an opening then for me, because there was slack to take up, basically, and sort of features to be written. And so that meant I could move up into being road test editor or features editor, and you find, again, you look for the things that suit you and the bits of writing that you like doing and the different sorts of things. So initially you just want to drive as many cars as possible and just review them. And then you realize that actually it might be the drive stories that really excite you sort of as much as the cars. So I sort of definitely enjoyed doing those things. And that's the sort of the progress that you sort of take through there. Then there was Drive Tribe. That was the next thing. That was the sort of leap I made away from Evo, which I kind of knew at some point would probably have to happen, because I don't think I never really saw editor of a magazine in my future. Kind of, I was,
You're ready to take that next jump.
Yeah, so if I wasn't going to kind of try and become the editor of the magazine, take on more of the administration side of things, then you got to find progress elsewhere.
Excitement.
Just to change. And Drive Tribe seemed, it was a chance to work with, obviously, Clarkson, Hammond and May at the start. So that was exciting, and it was something new, and it was, again, digital platform. It felt like progress and something a bit different. And we did some cool films that, it was a step on in terms of the video making. We had that bit more budget, a bit more time. It was just
How close have you ever been to just doing Henry Catchpole YouTube channel?
I've obviously thought about it. I don't think, and people have said, "Oh, you should."
How different would the films be?
That's the big thing, I think, for me, is that I don't think I could make the films that I want to make, and that I've probably become known for doing it on my own, because I have to make a living from this as well, and I don't have that sort of,
because I'm guessing with almost like a Hagerty plan, it'd be like, oh, hang on, we can make this film, it will get revenue back, it'll probably lose a bit, I'd imagine, on the film, but we're doing it because we've got to promote what we do.
It's part of the bigger
company. So there's probably there's a recovery, and that's the bit it actually costs us at the top. And then you're able with that bit to create the magic. Is that what you'd lose doing it yourself?
Yeah, I think sort of there's a, the way it is at the moment, I can concentrate on going out and making the films. And yes, there's other aspects of the logistics side of it and all that sort of comes into it, sort of in terms of planning it or ringing people up or managing calendars and all that sort of stuff that I generally don't like doing. But kind of, I don't have to deal with the financial side of it. Essentially, they pay me to make the films, and then we give them the films, and there's enough budget there to go and make the films we want to make. And there's not that kind of, like you say, direct correlation between, is this film going to bring in that much money from that much expenditure, which would, we all know that YouTube is not set up to make money like that. If I was looking at it that way, I would go off and I'd make drag race films with,
I just can't picture you in a Gordon Murray T50 or McLaren F1 going, and now it's time to understand holy energy, which is powering my drive today. The McLaren F1, I just can't see that being part of the film. So it would be a difficult thing to do.
Yeah. And I'm not saying, I'll never go and do it, or sort of, I wouldn't have my own show, but it would have to be very different, I think. I'm not saying it wouldn't be me if I did go and do something like that, or found a way to do it, to have it sit alongside Hagerty maybe. And yeah, I've thought about it, but I want to make those films in the same way that I like writing for magazines that will send a photographer off for me, and you can come back and you can spend the time, you can write an indulgent 2,000-3,000 words on a group test with beautiful photos taken by a photographer that's incredibly talented. It's different to me sitting down and writing a Substack. I love the output at the end being something I can be proud of and that stands the test of time. And I just don't think I could do that.
Have you always felt secure doing what you do?
No, I don't think so.
You ever wanted to feel more? Is it a difficult thing you do to feel secure?
The other thing is, as soon as you want to feel secure, sort of, I'm not saying, I think, financial security, everything else, kind of sort of job security, that's all something that certainly as you go through life and you get older and you start out and you're on 15 grand, you're just pleased to be inside the velvet ropes and kind of, you don't have the weight of the world on your shoulders. I'm not saying I do now, but you don't think of anything other than, I've got my dream job. You pour everything into it. And then as you go through life, obviously, other pressures come along and you realize it's a living as well as your dream job. So yeah, obviously, I suppose if that's what you mean by security, I suppose.
Is it it's just difficult not it being your own channel, making the films for other people. I've obviously seen you move from Evo to Drive Tribe to Carfection to Hagerty. Yes. Was Hagerty a breath of fresh air when it came along? Like, these could be the ones to work with. Was it always trying to find the right fit?
I mean, Carfection sort of naturally came to, it was one of those things, it dovetailed kind of, it was incredible. I was lucky. Again, it dovetailed, Hagerty came along just at the point where Carfection was going to end, I think, anyway, where it was, as it turned out. So that was great. And Hagerty, I obviously knew their output. I think when they initially approached me, very loyal to places, the last thing I wanted to do is just go buy Carfection because the channel was.
It's a long career as well, so it makes it sound worse than the way it is because it's so spread out. Those videos, I can't believe some of those videos with the F12 and the Vanquish that I spoke about. 12.
I know.
Years old.
Yeah. It's long. I still get things now where I sort of I'll go back to reference something, sort of thinking, I know I was on that shoot, and then I'll go back or I'll look up a sort of, I wonder what sort of Evo said about such and such. I was like, I wrote that. What did I? I did. Yes, I remember that now. It was that. Yes, well, good. That's fine. I'm not remembering somebody else's. It's my own impressions I'm remembering. So, you have a few more moments like that. But yeah, I think the security thing. Yeah, it'd be lovely to have my own channel, I suppose. But I don't know how that.
Are you a good negotiator?
No, I don't think so.
So I always look in everybody's story of what they may have tried differently or harder at or focused more on at one part of what they do. And it must be an incredibly hard thing to go to a company and be like, right, I've got this film where I'm going to get the best supercars in the world. I'm going to drive them. I'm going to love it on the best roads in the world. And we're going to make the best film. And it's going to cost more than what it brings in, but you should really do it because it's good for marketing. Is that a really tough thing to do sometimes? Or when you get to your level, has it become a lot easier?
I think it's become, well, there's just been this sort of progression through. I haven't had to necessarily worry about, like I said before, how it's monetized, how it's justified, because the magazine, I wasn't thinking about. I wasn't writing an article to pander to anybody. Evo very much wasn't a case of we're going to write a nice article about this so that you advertise in the magazine next month. That never happened. And I haven't had to, Carfection was part of the world's largest tech website, which was also in turn owned by the world's largest broadcasting corporation, CBS, Viacom CBS. So we were, our budget was a pixel on the end decimal point of somebody's budget somewhere. They were making Big Bang Theory. We're not, however much we might think sort of.
Well, I think you and Sheldon had a really good chat,
You might be, yeah. I don't think, so we were lucky to that extent again there that we kind of, we had our budget, but we're not worrying necessarily about how they're monetizing all that. It's going into a bigger pot.
Probably made you a better journalist though, because that meant that you could always focus on the cars more and not have that other stress.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I didn't want to have that I wanted to remain a journalist as well, to have that impartiality to be able to, I don't want to go and drive a car because I've got to say, nice things about it if it's not what, if it's not nice.
Is it ever a competitive world in the sense of, yes, you go away and you look like you have the best time, and I'm sure you do with the guys when you get invited on like Evo Car of the Year. God, is that a dream for me to be part of that test every year one day and add my mark on automotive and be involved in that? Because wow. But also when you go there and you get to the bar and there's 10 of the guys at the bar and they might create films for other channels here and there, Jeff and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And you've got this idea like, I'm going to put T50 and F1 together. Like, do you keep stuff to yourself to make sure it doesn't get out?
Everybody does. Yeah. Because it would be daft to.
Is it ever a race to a film? Do you have a race to a film?
I mean, there would be, I don't know, because you're not, that's a, you're saying before, you might have guests that you want to get on here before anybody else, and you're going to try and make it happen. You've got to realize that sometimes you might get there first, and it's often but there's, Top Gear is still a mighty force within the industry. They're probably going to get there before you on some of the big ticket items. They might not. Great, you get there first, but equally, you've just got to try and do the best job you can. And it doesn't mean I'm going to go and say exactly what we're doing, because you don't want somebody else to go out there, and we have quite long lead times often on films as well. So there's no point kind of giving something away unless you have to. Does that make sense?
In the same way that you've got a 1 to 10 on YouTube when the videos go live and it tells you, that one smashed it, that one's my God, I'm going to go get in the bath and cry. Do you have a video that was the F1 versus T50 for you, your 1 out of 10 in the videos you've made? What's the happiest you've been? Because you are a perfectionist, and like I see it even with the shots. You mentioned your team that works, but I noticed when you were hitting the start button in T50, I could even see your fingerprint, basically. I mean, you're screwed if you ever lose your phone. But is there a video that you're like, that's the one that encompasses everything I want about a video?
It's certainly the F1 T50 is something I'm very proud of because, as we said, it's there are always things you do more, you give yourself more time here or there, and you're always thinking kind of, oh, we could do this, we could do it. But that felt like, we've done the best we can kind of with the opportunity that we've got, and we went the extra mile, and the reception it got afterwards, you sort of, that's a certain amount of validation.
How do you top a T50 in F1? Is that a difficult thing? Because normally through a career, you're obviously always aiming. I want to get it. Does it get tough when you get to films that to be like, oh, what the hell can we do now? I've driven my two favourite cars.
And it's partly sort of, if I let sort of slightly bemused, or not bemused, but sort of thoughtful when you said that question, because you are always thinking about the next one. And it's, again, a slight quirk of the job is that, I'll have been thinking about a film from, sometimes months beforehand, whether it's just a case of, the invite comes in, or you're talking to somebody about, we're going to be traveling here, can we come and drive this car? And you work up to it, and then you film it, and then you edit it, and then you get all this, and it's uploaded. And the final bit is it goes live, but you're probably already working obviously on the next, 3 or 4 films down the road. So your mind is already over there, and you've kind of, you're looking at the next one, and you're always trying to think, what can we do better? And I still drive over here this morning, you're thinking about what is the next leap. How can we make something different? How can you make something that stands out? Kind of, because lots of people are making such good quality films now, and there's a certain democratization of the cameras, and that's sort of, you obviously still have to have very skillful people to operate them, and that's where I'm lucky. I've always, like I said before, surrounded myself by people that have that ability. But again, we're talking about, what can we do next? Is there a shot that we can do next that's going to really make people sit up and take notice, sort of from the angle that you're capturing, or sort of the way you're talking about it, or what you're going to do? I love the drive stories. There's certain films that you get back. I did one ages ago with a 570 GT, I think it was, McLaren, called Home Run. We took it up to Clan McLaren's, sort of the seat of Clan McLaren up in Scotland. And that was a film that just kind of, when it came back in and you saw the edit, and you're like, yeah, that's kind of, that makes you feel good. And sometimes still you get certain films that
gives you fuel.
Yeah, exactly. Driving Group B, S1E2 Quattro, that I love rally cars. Doing those really makes me very happy. And again, giving me a chance to drive that, and that you're the first person. It's, you put more miles on that car than anyone this side of Stig, the real Stig, kind of Blomqvist, sort of in 20 years or whatever. And you think, I'm getting to drive a Group B. And again, at the time we went that little bit further. We went and filmed the PDK box that came with it. We'd thought, actually, about a year earlier, we'd filmed an interview with Stig Blomqvist sitting in that car, not yet knowing that I was going to get to drive it, but I made the decision and said, we're going to get this interview. Talked to me, I was like, when I can drive that car, we'll put that interview into that film. So I felt like when it all came together, that really gave me a lot of satisfaction, because you've put that piece of film away, tucked in your pocket, thought, when we get to do that, we can bring it together and we can make it not just me going, I'm having a fantastic time in this car. It feels like a...
Who do you enjoy the films with closely? Because I know you said that you sometimes struggle to watch them yourself, but you appreciate bits and like, yeah, I nailed that. But are your parents still around to kind of soak up those films?
My mother's still around, yeah. And yeah, I don't know. I don't sort of...
She ever watched them and ping one to you?
Oh yeah, my mother still watches.
Yeah?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So, which is lovely, and kind of, my sister will watch them as well. And it's sort of, yeah, I think, I said before, I'm lucky with the audience. Obviously, we send the films off to Matt and Ben for Hagerty, and it's always, but I still have that's the first sort of almost moment where you put it out into the world. You sort of send it off to somebody else and see what they think about it, and then they're usually very nice about it. We'll come back and sort of, it's amazing, and we get a great line, well, that's really cool, love that line, or whatever. and that gives you the confidence then to put it out into the world and kind of think, yeah, you've done a good job with it. But yeah, I sometimes go back and watch my own films, sort of further down the line. So you occasionally go back and pick up an old magazine and read what you wrote, and for better or worse. And people come up to me and sort of say, "Love that particular film that you did," and that's wonderful. And that sometimes makes me think.
I'm going to ask about that. From describing the almost not shock, the surprise of your parents when you were younger at what you ended up doing, but I never expected you to be on camera.
Yeah.
Have you always handled the people side of it okay, or do you find it a little bit odd, or like how recognised you must be from some of these films when they go out and get 1 million views, etc.? Like, has that been something as an individual to get quite used to over the years?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely different. Just sitting here doing this podcast is very strange when you do a podcast for the first time. And I don't do many because it's you go on one and I hadn't given it enough thought, but you suddenly realise, hang on a minute, I'm not talking about cars as such. I'm talking about myself or the process behind it. Sort of, you can sort of hide behind the cars to some extent in a film, and you have that control over it. And I get to edit it, I get to see it beforehand, and all that sort of stuff. So, and when you go from writing for a magazine to suddenly being on camera, I remember the difference it made in terms of how many people would walk up to you and recognise you. It didn't happen really with magazines. It just doesn't, because we weren't posting that many pictures of ourselves. It was a pretty rare thing.
People can. Do you think it's fair to say? I know how much you appreciate writing and how much you could probably sit at, but the wider audience, the video enables you to connect with an individual's personality just in that other level you can out of writing.
Seeing somebody on the screen makes them instantly so much more recognisable. And you can, when somebody's clocked you or sort of recognised you or whatever, and you get better at it, and people generally are very nice. And it's a lovely thing. I can't say I'm particularly uncomfortable with it, but it's made me relatively private anyway. I'm not out there for sort of...
Have you ever had that moment where you're like, I can't believe they're watching? Like, even though you're at this level now.
Yeah.
Like I had Jay Leno say that he'd listened to one of my podcasts and reached out for me to come and see him while I was there. I was like, what is happening? Like, that is insane. Like, one of the best interviewers in the world. And it like absolutely cataclysmically blew my mind.
Yeah.
Was that similar for you when you were going into Drive Tribe? Like,
I mean, it's sort of, it still blows my way when you sort of, there was certain Goodwood and Alex Albon was there, and there was a reason sort of, and he sort of looked up and looked around and went, "Oh, hello, Henry." And he's a lovely chap, and we had a brief conversation, but that's, it's an F1 driver sort of, and you just sort of don't expect
what it's like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sort of how is he sort of recognised? And it wasn't sort of, there's all sorts of...
You're having your coffee afterwards going, bloody hell, it's amazing who's watching, isn't it? Like, it does make you think, but there's going to be so many people watching and listening to this conversation today that have understood, hopefully, a little bit more around everything, the padding, as I call it, around the final videos, the piece, because I love doing stuff like this, because it's like with Camisa as well, and I had him on it enables you guys to kind of allow the audience to appreciate what goes into all that work, those sentences, those camera shots, those days, those contracts, who you're doing it for, where you're doing it. There's so much more to that 40 minutes of film than meets the eye, and thank you for allowing people to understand that a little bit more today.
So right. Have a mumble team up.
Henry Catchpole, best mumbler I've ever had in the man. Thank you so much for coming on Road to Success, and hopefully we'll get to catch up again in the future.
Yes, thank you.